Ma'am, I gave you a lawful order. Stand up. ID. Now.
This is a public park. We are committing no crime. You have no legal basis to detain us.
You don't get to lecture me. You're acting suspicious. Turn around. Oh, please. She's done nothing wrong. Back up. Both of you. Hands where I can see them. Stop.
Willow Creek Park is the jewel of Oak Ridge. It sits adjacent to the wealthier subdivision of the city, a sprawling expanse of manicured emerald grass, weeping willows dipping their branches into a slow-moving stream and stone walking paths that circle a central pond. It is public property maintained by city taxes, open to anyone who wishes to enjoy the sunlight. It was 1:15 p.m. The sky was a piercing blue, clear and bright. The temperature was a perfect 72 degrees. Judge Eleanor Mathis had served on the federal bench for 12 years. Her career was a testament to iron discipline and intellectual rigor. She had spent a decade as a federal prosecutor putting away organized crime figures and dismantling trafficking rings before being appointed as a magistrate judge. She was known in the Western District for her piercing intellect, her encyclopedic knowledge of constitutional law, and a temperament that was calm, fair, but utterly unyielding when it came to the rules of her court. She was a woman who commanded respect not by raising her voice, but by lowering it. That Thursday was her 30th wedding anniversary. She had taken a rare afternoon off. Her husband, Dr. Marcus Mathis, had cleared his surgery schedule. Marcus was a man of quiet strength, a surgeon whose hands had saved thousands of lives, a man who had navigated the complexities of race and medicine in America for 40 years with grace and dignity. They had decided to keep it simple. They packed a basket with sparkling water, artisanal cheese, fresh fruit, and sandwiches from their favorite deli. They drove to Willow Creek, found a shaded spot under a massive oak tree near the water, and spread out a blanket. They looked like exactly what they were, an affluent, successful older couple enjoying a quiet milestone in their marriage. Eleanor wore a linen sundress and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her eyes. Marcus was in polo shirt and pressed khakis. They were laughing softly, reminiscing about their honeymoon in Charleston 3 decades prior. They weren't playing loud music. They weren't shouting. They were eating grapes and holding hands. But in the eyes of Officer Kyle Vance and the woman who called him, they were something else entirely. They were an anomaly. They were out of place. And for an officer like Vance, who viewed the world through a lens of suspicion rather than service, out of place, was enough to justify a confrontation. He didn't see a judge and a surgeon. He saw targets. To understand why Officer Vance arrived at the park with his mind already made up, we have to look at the call that set these events in motion. The caller was Brenda Halloway, a 52-year-old resident of the Willow Creek subdivision. Brenda was the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood's aesthetic. She was the president of the Homeowners Association, a position she wielded with the enthusiasm of a feudal lord. She spent her days monitoring the streets from her front bay window phone in hand, ready to report anything that didn't align with her vision of the community. From her vantage point across the street from the park entrance, Brenda saw the Mathises pull up in their luxury sedan. She watched them unload their picnic basket. She watched them walk to the shade of the oak tree. There was no crime being committed. There was no disturbance. But Brenda felt a distinct sense of territorial anxiety. In her mind, the park was an extension of her subdivision intended for residents. While the park was technically public, the locals treated it as their private backyard. And she didn't recognize Eleanor and Marcus. She watched them for 10 minutes, her irritation growing. They looked too comfortable. They were taking up the best spot near the water. Why were they here? Why weren't they at work? Brenda picked up her phone and dialed the non-emergency police line, a number she had saved in her favorites. Oak Ridge Police Dispatcher Miller? Yes, this is Brenda Halloway. I'm calling to report suspicious activity at Willow Creek Park. The dispatcher, who knew Brenda's voice well from dozens of prior frivolous calls, sighed audibly. What is the nature of the suspicious activity, Ms. Halloway? There are 2 people, a man and a woman, loitering in the park. They don't live here. I know everyone who lives here. They've been sitting on the grass for 20 minutes, just watching the houses. Are they threatening anyone? Are they causing a disturbance? They are making me feel unsafe, Brenda insisted, her voice tightening. They are loitering, and I think they might be casing the homes across the street. They're just sitting there. It's the middle of the workday. Decent people are at work. I want an officer to come check them out. We have a no trespassing policy for non-residents after dusk, and they look like they're settling in. It's 100 p.m., Ms. Holloway. The park is open to the public during the day. Well, I want them checked, Brenda snapped. They don't belong here. Send someone now. The call was logged. The dispatcher coded it as a suspicious person, check subject call, but included notes. Caller is regular complainant Holloway. Subjects described as picnicking. When the call came over the radio, Officer Kyle Vance was 2 miles away, sitting in his cruiser, bored. He read the dispatch notes on his computer terminal. Suspicious persons. Loitering. Casing homes. He ignored the part about the caller being a known nuisance. He ignored the time of day. His mind latched onto the narrative that offered the most excitement potential burglars scouting a wealthy neighborhood. Vance had a history that should have precluded him from wearing a badge. In his 6 years, he had accumulated 14 internal complaints. Most were for rudeness, 2 for unauthorized searches, and 3 for bias-based profiling. He was known in the department as a hothead, an officer who escalated calm situations into chaos because he perceived any question as a challenge to his manhood. His supervisors had written him up, sent him to sensitivity training seminars, which he slept through, and warned him to tone it down. But the union protected him, and the culture of the department tolerated him because he wrote a lot of tickets and made arrest quotas. Vance threw his cruiser into gear and sped toward Willow Creek Park. He wasn't going there to investigate, he was going there to evict. He had already decided the outcome before he even saw the subjects. In his mind, he was the thin blue line protecting the good citizens of Willow Creek from the suspicious outsiders. Do you think officers should have access to the history of the 911 caller before they arrive on scene? Let us know in the comments below. Officer Vance pulled his patrol unit up to the curb of Willow Creek Park at 1:28 p.m. He didn't park in a designated spot. He pulled partially onto the grass, a power move designed to intimidate. He stepped out of the vehicle, adjusting his utility belt, checking the fit of his sunglasses. He was a large man, bulky from hours at the gym, carrying himself with a stiff, coiled aggression. He scanned the park. It was mostly empty, save for a young woman reading on a bench far away and the couple under the oak tree. Eleanor and Marcus Mathis. Vance began his approach. He didn't walk with the casual open gait of a community peace officer. He marched. His hand rested near his holster, not on it but close enough to send a message. As he got closer, he saw the expensive picnic basket, the sparkling water, the hardbound books. He saw a man in a crisp polo and a woman in a designer dress. But confirmation bias is a powerful blinder. Vance didn't see a wealthy couple. He saw 2 people trying to look innocent, which in his twisted logic made them guilty. Marcus noticed the officer first. He tapped Eleanor's hand gently. Ellie, we have company. Eleanor looked up, shielding her eyes against the sun. She saw the officer looming over them. She remained seated, her posture relaxed but attentive. She had spent a lifetime in courtrooms. She knew how to read body language, and Officer Vance was screaming hostility. Vance stopped 5 feet from their blanket. He didn't say, "Good afternoon." He didn't ask, "How are you folks doing? You 2 live around here?" Vance barked, his voice loud enough to carry across the water. Eleanor took a sip of her water, deliberately slow before setting the glass down. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" "I asked you a question," Vance said, stepping closer, his shadow falling over their food. "Do you live in this neighborhood? Let me see some ID." Marcus began to reach for his wallet, a reflex born of survival, but Eleanor placed a hand on his arm to stop him. She looked at Vance with the cool, analytical gaze that had withered defense attorneys for a decade. "Officer," Eleanor said, her voice steady and clear, "we are enjoying a private lunch in a public park. We are not committing any crime. We are not creating a disturbance. Unless you can articulate a reasonable suspicion that we have committed, are committing, or are about to commit a crime, we are not required to identify ourselves." Vance's face flushed. In his 6 years on the street, he wasn't used to people quoting the law back to him. He was used to fear. He was used to submission. This woman sitting on the ground looking up at him was speaking to him like he was a first-year law student who had failed an exam. "I got a call about suspicious activity." Vance lied, inflating the nature of the complaint. "Loitering. Casing houses. Now this park is for residents. If you don't live here, you're trespassing. So I'm going to ask you one more time. ID. Now." "That is incorrect," Eleanor stated. "This is Willow Creek Park. It is municipal property maintained by the Oak Ridge Department of Parks and Recreation. It is open to the public from sunrise to sunset. There is no residency requirement. As for loitering, having a picnic is not loitering. It is the intended use of this space." Vance's jaw tightened. He felt his control slipping. The logic didn't matter to him. The law didn't matter. What mattered was that a black woman was telling him no. "Listen to me." Vance stepped onto the corner of their blanket, his muddy boot soiling the fabric. "I don't care what you think you know. When I ask for ID, you give it to me. You're acting suspicious. Refusing to identify is obstruction. Now stand up, both of you." Marcus looked at the officer, his concern growing. "Officer, look, we're just celebrating our anniversary. My name is Dr. Mathis. This is my wife. We aren't trying to cause any trouble." "I didn't ask for your life story," Vance snapped, pointing a finger in Marcus's face. "I said stand up. Get your hands out of your pockets." The situation had shifted from an annoyance to a constitutional crisis in the span of 90 seconds. Eleanor Mathis realized that reason was not going to penetrate Officer Vance's armor of aggression. She had seen officers like this in her courtroom, men who escalated encounters because they lacked the emotional intelligence to de-escalate them. But she also knew that as a black woman in America, even with her title, she was in a precarious position. She stood up slowly, dusting off her dress. She signaled for Marcus to do the same. She moved with a deliberate, regal slowness that seemed to infuriate Vance even more. "Officer," Eleanor said, standing at her full height. She was 5'7", but she projected the authority of a giant. "You are making a significant mistake. I am going to reach into my purse now. I am going to retrieve my credentials. I strongly suggest you look at them before you take this any further." "Don't reach for anything," Vance yelled, his hand dropping to his holster, unsnapping the retention strap. "Turn around. Turn around now." "I am not turning around," Eleanor said, her voice hardening. "I am telling you that I am a federal judge. My husband is a surgeon. You are harassing us based on a bias-motivated call. You have no probable cause." "Federal judge?" Vance scoffed. He laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Yeah, right. And I'm the director of the FBI. You think I haven't heard every lie in the book? You people always have some story." "You people." The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. By now, the commotion had drawn attention. 2 joggers had stopped on the path. A man walking his dog had paused and pulled out his phone. The camera was rolling. Vance didn't care. In his mind, the camera was just recording his righteous enforcement of the law against disorderly subjects. "I am giving you a lawful order," Vance shouted, stepping into Eleanor's personal space. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for trespassing, failure to identify, and resisting an officer." "I am not resisting," Eleanor said, ensuring her voice was loud enough for the witnesses to hear. "I am questioning the legality of your order. There is no trespass. There is no crime. You are violating my Fourth Amendment rights." "That's it," Vance growled. He didn't wait for compliance. He grabbed Eleanor's arm. He didn't use the gentle guide of a professional. He used the rough, wrenching grip of a brawler. He spun her around with enough force that she stumbled. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, stepping forward. "Get your hands off her. She has arthritis in her shoulder." Vance shoved Marcus back with his free hand hard enough to send the older man staggering against the tree trunk. "Back up, or you're next, old man. Back up. Do not touch my husband." Eleanor cried out, the pain in her shoulder shooting down her arm. "Officer, you are assaulting a federal magistrate. Stop this now." "Stop fighting." Vance yelled, playing to the imaginary audience that would justify his report. He yanked Eleanor's arms behind her back, twisting her wrists upward. The pain was sharp and immediate. He pulled the handcuffs from his belt. Click, click. The sound of the ratchets tightening was sickeningly loud in the quiet park. Eleanor Mathis, a woman who had signed warrants for the FBI, who had sentenced international drug lords, who was one of the most respected legal minds in the state, was now handcuffed like a common criminal in the middle of a picnic. Vance wasn't finished. He turned to Marcus. "You too. You want to intervene? You're going for obstruction." "I am not intervening," Marcus said. His hands raised, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I am watching you assault my wife. I am a doctor. You are hurting her. Turn around!" Vance grabbed Marcus, spinning him and slamming him against the tree. He cuffed the surgeon quickly, roughly. There they stood, a surgeon and a judge, handcuffed, humiliated, their anniversary lunch trampled in the dirt. "You have destroyed your career," Eleanor said quietly, her back to Vance. She wasn't shouting anymore. Her voice had dropped to a terrified calm. "You have no idea what you have just done." "Shut up," Vance said, breathing heavy, the adrenaline of the bully coursing through him. "Get moving, to the car." The walk to the patrol car was a procession of shame, but not for the couple. It was a shame that belonged to the officer, though he was too blinded by his own ego to feel it yet. The witnesses were filming. A woman shouted from the path, "They didn't do anything. They were just eating lunch." Vance ignored her. He shoved Eleanor into the back seat of the cruiser. It was a tight plastic cage. The heat was stifling. He shoved Marcus in the other side. They sat squeezed together, hands bound behind their backs, their shoulders touching. "Are you okay?" Marcus whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Your shoulder. It hurts," Eleanor admitted, wincing. "But I'm more worried about him. He's dangerous." Vance got into the front seat. He didn't check on their comfort. He didn't buckle them in. He started the car and peeled away from the curb, driving fast, aggressive. "You folks think you can just come into a nice neighborhood and do whatever you want." Vance lectured them from the front seat, watching them in the rearview mirror. "Think you can talk back to police? Think the rules don't apply to you? Maybe where you come from that works, but not in Oak Ridge. We have order here." "I live 4 miles from here," Marcus said calmly. "In the Highlands." "Sure you do," Vance sneered. "And I live in a castle. You know, if you'd just been humble, if you'd just shown me some ID and moved along when I told you to, none of this would have happened. You brought this on yourselves. It's about respect. You have to respect authority." Eleanor stared at the back of his head. She was memorizing everything. The time, the route, his badge number 492, his name tag, Vance. Every word he spoke was another nail in the coffin of his career. She didn't argue with him anymore. There is no point in arguing with a storm. You just document the damage. "Officer," Eleanor said, "I am requesting that you contact your supervisor immediately upon arrival." "You'll see the sergeant when I'm done processing you," Vance said. "You're going to sit in a holding cell and think about your attitude. Maybe I'll let you go with a citation in a few hours if you apologize." He actually believed that. He believed he was going to teach them a lesson, write them a ticket for trespassing, and send them on their way. He had done it before to teenagers, to construction workers, to people he deemed lesser. He had no concept of the storm that was gathering over his head. The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. When they pulled into the Sally port, the garage door rumbling shut behind them, the atmosphere changed. The precinct was a place of procedure. Cameras were everywhere. Vance hauled them out of the car. He marched them through the heavy steel doors into the intake area. The desk sergeant on duty was Thomas Miller. He was 58 years old, a 30-year veteran who was counting the days to retirement. He was a good cop, a man who knew the community, who knew the players. He was sipping coffee and reviewing a shift log when Vance walked in with his 2 prisoners. Miller looked up. He saw Officer Vance flushed and looking triumphant. Then he looked at the prisoners. He saw a man in a polo shirt looking dignified but furious. He saw a woman in a linen dress, her hat missing her hair slightly mussed, but her eyes burning with a cold, terrifying intelligence. Miller's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He squinted. He recognized the woman. He had seen her picture in the paper. He had testified in her courtroom 3 years ago on a federal task force case. His stomach dropped through the floor. "Vance," Miller said, his voice low and strangled. "What do you have here?" "Trespassing at Willow Creek," Vance announced, throwing the paperwork on the high counter. "Refused to identify. Resisting. Disorderly. Real piece of work, these 2. Claimed she was a federal judge." Vance laughed again. Miller didn't laugh. He stood up slowly. He looked at Eleanor. "Ma'am," Miller said, Are you Judge Mathis?" Eleanor looked at the sergeant. "I am U.S. Magistrate Judge Eleanor Mathis. This is my husband, Dr. Marcus Mathis. I was arrested while eating a sandwich. I would like these handcuffs off. Now." The silence that fell over the intake room was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum before an explosion. Officer Vance looked at Sergeant Miller. He looked at Eleanor. The smile faded from his face, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "Sarge, you buy that. She's just saying, 'Shut your mouth, Vance,'" Miller roared. The volume of his voice made the young officer jump. "Shut your mouth right now." And Miller came around the desk. He didn't walk, he ran. "Key, give me your key." "Sarge, they were resisting." "Give me the damn key." Miller snatched the key from Vance's hand. He moved behind Eleanor. "Judge Mathis, I don't even know what to say. I am so sorry." He unlocked the cuffs. Eleanor brought her arms forward, rubbing her wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had bitten into her skin. Miller moved to Marcus and unlocked him immediately. "Doctor, my apologies. Are you injured? Do you need a medic?" "My wife has a shoulder injury," Marcus said, his voice icy. "He assaulted her." Vance was standing by the counter looking like a child who had just realized he had broken the most expensive vase in the house. The reality was crashing down on him. The confidence was draining away, replaced by a cold, sick dread. She didn't show ID," Vance stammered. "She wouldn't show ID." "I tried to show you my credentials," Eleanor said, turning to face him. She wasn't yelling. She was speaking with the absolute finality of a sentencing hearing. "I told you exactly who I was. You told me it was a fake. You told me to shut up. You told me I didn't belong." "Vance." Miller set his face purple with rage. "Go into the conference room. Sit down. Don't touch your radio. Don't touch your phone. Just sit there." "But..." "Go!" Vance retreated, disappearing into the side room. Miller turned back to the couple. "Judge, I am calling the chief right now. He's at a luncheon, but he will be here in 10 minutes. Please come sit in my office. Can I get you water ice for your wrists?" "I want the footage preserved," Eleanor said. "Body cam, dash cam, Sallyport video, everything. And I want to make a formal criminal complaint for assault and false imprisonment." "It's already being pulled, Judge," Miller promised. "Everything is being locked down." 10 minutes later, Chief of Police Robert Danton burst through the doors. He was a man who prided himself on running a clean department, and he looked like he was about to have a stroke. He saw Eleanor Mathis sitting in the sergeant's office, holding an ice pack to her wrist. He knew her. He had attended Rotary Club meetings with her. "Judge Mathis," Danton said, breathless. "Eleanor, I got the call from Miller." "Robert," Eleanor said calmly, "your officer arrested me for being black in a public park." "I know. I saw the preliminary log. There are no words." "There are words, Robert," Eleanor said. "The words are false arrest, assault, and civil rights violation. That young man out there put his hands on me. He twisted my arm behind my back while I was holding a sandwich. He called us you people. He told us we didn't belong." She stood up. "He is a danger to this community." "If he did this to me, Robert, imagine what he has been doing to people who don't have my title. Imagine what he does to the teenagers who can't call the chief of police." The reckoning was swift, brutal, and public. Chief Danton didn't wait for an internal affairs investigation to drag on for months. He reviewed the body camera footage in his office with Eleanor and Marcus present. The video was damning. It showed everything: the aggressive approach, the immediate hostility, the polite legal responses from the couple, the escalation, the assault, the mockery in the car. It was a masterclass in bad policing. Danton walked out of his office and into the conference room where Vance was sitting. The young officer stood up. "Chief, let me explain. They were being difficult." "Badge," Danton said. He held out his hand. "Sir, badge, gun, ID card. Put them on the table." Vance's hands shook. Am I on leave?" "You are suspended without pay pending termination proceedings which I am initiating today," Danton said. "And you are under criminal investigation for assault and deprivation of rights under color of law. You are done, Vance. You are not a police officer anymore. You are a liability." Vance stripped his gear. He placed the badge number 492 on the table. It made a heavy clunk. "Get out of my station," Danton said. As Vance walked out the back door, stripped of his authority, wearing just a t-shirt and uniform pants, he looked small. He passed the window of the sergeant's office. Eleanor Mathis was watching him. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just watched him with a look of profound disappointment. But the story didn't end there. The footage was released. It had to be. The state's open records laws were clear, and Eleanor Mathis demanded transparency. The video went viral within hours. Judge arrested for picnicking. Officer tells federal magistrate you people. The outrage was volcanic. Protests erupted outside the Oak Ridge Police Department. The FBI Civil Rights Division opened an investigation the next morning. The lawsuit followed. It wasn't just about the arrest. It was about the culture that allowed Vance to stay on the force despite 14 prior complaints. It was about the failure to supervise. Brenda Halloway, the caller, was not spared. While it is rare for 911 callers to face consequences, the audio of her call was released. Her frantic insistence that they don't look like they live here was exposed as purely racial bias. She was sued for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She lost her position as HOA president. She became a pariah in the neighborhood she claimed to be protecting. The city settled the civil rights lawsuit for $6.5 million. It was the largest payout in the city's history. But for Eleanor and Marcus Mathis, it wasn't about the money. They donated a significant portion of the settlement to the Legal Aid Society and a scholarship fund for minority law students. Kyle Vance was fired. His certification to be a police officer was permanently revoked by the state board. He would never carry a badge or a gun again. He was charged criminally with misdemeanor assault and official oppression. He pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, receiving 2 years of probation and a permanent criminal record. At 29, he was a felon, unemployable in security or law enforcement, forced to start over with the weight of his disgrace following him everywhere. The Oak Ridge Police Department underwent a DOJ-mandated overhaul. New policies were implemented regarding suspicious person calls, Officers were stripped of the discretion to demand ID without clear articulable criminal suspicion. The residents-only culture of the public parks was dismantled. On the one-year anniversary of the arrest, Eleanor and Marcus Mathis returned to Willow Creek Park. They went to the same tree. They spread the same blanket. They ate the same lunch. A young officer walked by on foot patrol. He was new hired under the reform standards. He saw them. He didn't stop. He didn't ask for ID. He simply nodded and touched the brim of his cap. "Good afternoon, folks. Beautiful day for it." "Yes, it is," Marcus replied. The officer kept walking. It was a small moment, but a heavy one. It was what justice looked like, not a courtroom victory, but the simple quiet right to exist in a public space without fear. But we must ask ourselves, what if Eleanor hadn't been a judge? What if she had been a school teacher, a nurse, or a janitor? Would the handcuffs have come off so quickly? Would the chief have arrived in 10 minutes? Would the settlement have been millions? Or would they have been processed, charged, and forced to plead out to a disorderly conduct charge just to go home? Eleanor Mathis saved herself because she had the power of the federal government behind her. But the system shouldn't require a federal badge to treat citizens with dignity. This story ended with justice, but only because the victim was powerful enough to demand it. How many Kyle Vances are still out there patrolling your streets? How many Brenda Halloways are watching from their windows? And how many innocent people are sitting in cells right now because they didn't have the title judge to save them? If this story moved you, if you believe that we must demand better from those who hold power, please leave a comment below. Share this video. Let's keep the light on in the dark corners. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and take care of each other.